Okay, last lesson of the week. Standard form of a line is ax plus by equals c. There are some key differences from standard form and slope-intercept form. First off, in standard form, x and y are on the same side, as you can see. And the letters a, b, and c actually have no meaning at all. We just have to use basic algebra to graph a line in standard form. The first step to working with standard form is finding the x and y intercept. I will explain this full process at some point, which will be after this section here, but this video is meant to be short. Let's just look at some examples. Actually, you get 2 lessons in one video. I am just going to show you how to find x and y intercept. What you do to find x intercept, and you don't need to write it, just watch. You plug in y equals 0. And then if you want the y-intercept, you plug in x equals 0, which means when I want my x-intercept, I'm not going to go through everything. What I will do is put, again, x-intercept means y equals 0, so I put 3x plus 8 times 0 equals 24. 8 times 0 obviously turns into 0, and then the 0 goes away, leaving me just this. Once I get to that point, my common sense tells me divide by 3 and get my answer. Your y-intercept is, again, plug in x equals 0, so it'll be 3 times 0 plus 8y equals 24. It'll be 0 plus 8y equals 24, which means the 0 goes away. 8y equals 24. Again, don't write this, just kind of follow along with what's going on, because there is a trick here that you need to see before we move to our second part. I'm just going to do a and b, and I'm going to stop on this sheet because you really don't need me to do everything on this part. Here, if you want the x-intercept, again, x-intercept means to put 0 in for y, so you put 2x minus 3 times 0 equals 12, which means 2x minus 0 equals 12, which means once 0 goes away, 2x equals 12, and x would equal 6 when you divide. If you wanted your y-intercept, you would put 2 times 0 minus 3y equals 12. That becomes 0 minus 3y equals 12. 0 goes away, which makes negative 3y equals 12, and y would equal negative 4. Now, before we move on to our lesson, again, there's a whole lot of questions I could work through, but I'm not going to do it. I want you to pay attention to the spot after the 0 went away. And pay attention to the fact that this is the same as if I just completely ignored the y. This is exactly the same as if I completely ignored the x, except don't cover the plus. This is the same as if I completely ignored the y. This is the same as if I completely ignored the x. So in other words, you could plug in 0, like that's the formal way to do the x and y intercepts, but in general, the general idea on how you find the x-intercept is to just kind of ignore y, as we're going to talk about in our notes as we get started on this part here. So we've done a lot of work with slope-intercept form of a line. We've used it to graph lines. We use it to create rules for patterns. Today we're going to look at the standard form. Again, the standard form is written in the form ax plus by equals c. And again, as I said earlier, what do a, b, and c stand for? They're just coefficients. They don't tell us anything about the slope. So do not assume that any of these things mean anything important outside of what we use them for to find what we're looking to do in that problem. There are some differences that must be understood. Slope-intercept is where y is alone. Standard form is where x and y are on one side, and the constant is alone. This lesson revolves around 4 basic skill sets. You'll be introduced to each, and then it's up to you to practice, research, develop, and master on your own. Finding x and y intercepts. Standard form is set up perfectly to find what we call the x-intercept and a y-intercept. The formal way, as I just told you, is to take 0 and plug it into the appropriate variable. For example, for the x-intercept, plug 0 into the y variable. How do you notice that? I care about x if I want the x-intercept, so y means nothing to me, so I put 0 in for y. If I want the y-intercept, y means everything, which means x means nothing, and so that kind of helps me out. But again, you have to solve that in order to get to where you need to be. Common sense works better with lines. If we're looking for the x-intercept, that means we're not concerned about the y-axis or y variable, so my best idea for you is to ignore the y term, and your MathXL is going to make you do this, so just kind of make sure you're paying attention to the way that I'm going to do it from here. If you're looking for the y-intercept, that means we don't care about the x, so because of that we will ignore the x. I don't have my watch on. Alright, so let's look at a couple of quick examples real fast. just to see what's going on. So find the x and y intercepts. Again, if you want the x-intercept, that means that x is what's important, y is not. So what we end up doing is we actually take our y out of the equation and simply work with 3x equals 30. That means that x is 10. Again, x-intercept means I don't care about y, which means you can honestly just take your y out. For your y-intercept, again, starting from here, I don't care about the x. Now don't eliminate the negative because that negative is part of 5, but it does give me y is equal to negative 6. And again, it's a very easy process. You just have to make sure that you are ready for that process. Again, on this one, your x-intercept, you would ignore the 5y, which leaves me with just, sorry, I gotta move my pen, x equals negative 15. For my y-intercept, I ignore the x, which leaves us with 5y equals negative 15. Therefore, y, if you divide, is equal to negative 3, and that would be it. So once we know how to find the intercepts, we just need to plot and connect them. So here are your examples on how to graph a line in standard form. If it's in standard form, again, x and y together, constant on the other side. First thing I'll start off with is finding my x-intercept. Notice how I ignored the y. Therefore, x is 4.5. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and a half. Y-intercept would be negative 3y equals 9. Therefore, y is negative 3, which means down 3. And again, once you get those 2 points, just like with anything else, you will connect them and finish it off. So the difference between this and the one we did before is that we had a b and an m, and we plotted our b, then used the slope. That's not the case here. Here you want to find your intercept, and then plot those two intercepts and let your line connect them. Here's another one. Again, if you were asked to do this, first thing I would do, recognizing it's in standard form, is the x-intercept, which means that x is 7. Then I'd find my y-intercept, again ignoring x, which means that y is 8. The problem is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't have it, so what I would do instead, and you can always do this, is just like I said before, change the count. So if x is 7, I'd go 2, 4, 6. 7 would be the halfway point. For 8, I go 2, 4, 6, 8. And again, once I get those 2 points plotted, everything else just does what I need it to do. Alright. The last thing you're going to do is translate application problems. In order to do that, you must remember the power of the words each, per, and every. We've learned that these words indicate the need to attach a variable. So translate the statement here. Local store has cake that sells for $5.75 each, cookies for $2.50 each. If you want an equation for how many cakes and cookies could be bought for $15, notice that has a each, that has a each, so we would put 5.75x for one of them. And since it's two different amounts, we put 2.50y equals 15. Notice how this is now in standard form. I have two variables on one side, the number on the other side. That would be our situation. So again, whenever you have two things that have a each on it, it's probably going to be set up in standard form, whereas you have the other ones where it's just one each and you go ahead and work it out as if it was slope-intercept. Similar to the skill necessary in slope-intercept form, we must also learn how to interpret what the values in standard form actually mean. So let's look at this example before we move on. Again, this is not something you're going to have to remember because we're in quarantine, but you do want to at least see it. A stand at the mall is selling popcorn for $1.50 and candy for $3.75. The following equation represents the situation. They want to know what x represents. Well, if $1.50 is the cost of popcorn, then x must be the number of bags of popcorn sold, because it's $1.50 per bag, or whatever it would be that's going here. Y, if $3.75 represents candy, then this would be amount, I guess, of candy sold, because if I only sold one piece of candy, I'd make $3.75. 10, I'd make $37.50, and so on. The $2.75, being the number over here, would obviously represent the total earned, and so that's what you're looking at there. So outside of that, like I said, just make sure that you get some practice on this. Again, there is one more section for us to talk about next week. Then you have your test. Make sure you're working to your 90% point so you can be ready for that pre-test, which will help you practice for the test as we get ready for it. But other than that, here is the notes for your stuff if you want to copy it. Just make sure you answer the question at the end of the video so you can get your credit for watching the video. And other than that, good luck.